Giving flowers is synonymous with Valentine's Day, and whether it's Valentine's Day or not, you want your blooms to last as long as possible. So I'm going to share with you my top tips for how to make these blooms last for at least a week. If you've not got time to arrange them when you receive them, I would suggest cutting 2 to 3 centimetres off the base of the stems, put them in a bucket of water, and then you can really enjoy arranging them and appreciate the love that someone's sent. Okay, so the first thing to do is to choose the vase that you're going to use. Now, often people use a really tall vase with quite a narrow neck, and actually all that does is clump together the flowers, and they're kind of like, I can't breathe, and they all look like they're standing to attention. They don't look great. So I've gone for a vase here which is quite dumpy, but it's got a really nice open top. The first thing I'm going to do is mix into this some clean water. I've got a litre of water because that's what it says on the instructions, and I'm just adding this flower food to the water. Now that needs to be stirred in. A litre of water doesn't really sound that much, and you'd be tempted to fill the vase right up to the top. But one thing that can do is mean that a lot of the foliage is actually underwater level, and it just goes soggy and smelly, and you know when you get that kind of bacteria smell, that's what causes it. So I'm just going to pour this water into the vase without spilling any. And you can see there really isn't that much water in that vase, and that's okay because you're going to need to top this up daily. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove this elastic band, because we really don't want all these flowers kind of clumped together. You do need to be a little bit brave when you're arranging flowers. Some people just take the cellophane off and then stick them in the vase. Some people don't even take the cellophane off. But I would advise, even though they've probably been beautifully arranged, I would advise you take the cellophane off and all the wrapping that comes with it so that your flowers can breathe. It's like opening a Christmas present. Okay, so we've got the roses here. Just be careful of the thorns. I know that sounds a bit obvious, but they are quite prickly. Now the first thing to do is just kind of relax the flower. If you were to only cut off the 2 to 3 centimetres, then that's really going to be too tall. So just drop the flower down behind the vase and kind of decide at what height you want to cut it. And I think these would look quite nice about there. So just with your finger mark that, and we'll make our first cut. Now I'm using a nice sharp pair of bypass secateurs to do this. I'll just show you there. We're kind of making that cut. If you cut it on a flat angle like that, there is a risk when you put that into the vase that the water won't be able to get into there. So if you cut them on an angle like so, it means that the water can, there's a bigger surface area basically for the water to get in. So you want to hold that out of the water for the least possible amount of time when you've cut it, so quickly get it in the vase. Now you'll notice that some of these leaves are actually below the vase level. They're not in the water, but they are below the vase level. So I'm going to remove those, and again using the secateurs. If you're doing this with flowers that are not that spiky or sharp, you can do it with your hand just by stripping the flower like that and getting rid of all the leaves. I kind of think I'm going to take that one off as well. It's got slightly damaged in transit, and they don't need the leaves. They don't need them at all. So I'm going to continue just snipping off these side leaves. Measure the flower. It's up to you whether you want to do them all at the same level, or if you want to, have a bit of height difference. It really depends on you, how adventurous you're feeling. People are always scared because if you think, oh no, we cut too much off, they think that they kind of can't go backwards then. And that's true, so if you are a bit nervous about it, cut a little bit at a time. You can always snip a little bit more off. Now first of all what I'm doing is just preparing these flowers. So I'm just removing these leaves and getting them to the right height that I want them. And this, florist would say, is preparing the flowers. Now you can do this and put them straight back in the bucket if you like, because I am going to take them back out of this vase in a moment. Okay, so I've reduced the height of all of the roses, and I've also trimmed off the base of these bits of pittosporum that came with it. If you didn't get any foliage with yours, you can always nip out into your garden and get some foliage. It's really just to kind of fill it out, I suppose. In fact, they call it fillers when they're using it as in flower arranging. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take each of the roses and we're going to lay them across our hand, because if you leave them in like that, I mean, you could space them out, and that's what most people do, right? Most people this Valentine's Day will go like that with their flowers, and they all kind of sag to the edge of the vase and they don't look great. So here's a little trick that I learned from a florist friend of mine. Always handle the flowers with the stems and never with the flower, and that sounds obvious, but the kind of warmth from your hands can damage the flowers. So you're going to lay them across each other. I don't know if you can see that there. We're going to lay them across one another, and then we're just going to kind of twist that round and lay another one. And so all the time we're aiming to create this kind of wigwam effect at the base of your bunch of flowers. And these roses aren't too spiky actually, which is a good thing. Now I'm going to go in with some of the foliage, and that wants to be quite low down. I'm going to split that up actually, because then I can distribute it more evenly through the bunch. So we've got 3 pieces there, kind of, and a piece in there. So keep hold of them. You can see this wigwam shape here. Oops. There you go. And if you give them a twist, you can see that you've kind of got a nice bunch of flowers there with some foliage in, and then you've got this kind of triangle effect at the bottom. Now, if there are any stems which are particularly a lot longer than the rest, you can always use this opportunity to trim them a bit more. Like I said, bypass secateurs are very good for this, or anvil secateurs if you're doing some of the more woody kind of pittosporum, or if you're using hazel, things like that. So just going to remove those leaves because they will be underground, or underwater, sorry. And I think we're good to go with that. Let's take that one off, it's a bit taller. Squeeze them in the top of the vase, and then as they relax into the vase, they kind of stand up and look a bit more perky. So my top tips for keeping these fresher for longer: you will need to change the water in there after 2 to 3 days. If you ever see water going murky in the bottom, you know that bacteria are starting to act, and the stems will then get blocked, they can't take up water, and so the flowers will die. If you do notice that the flowers are drooping slightly, make sure you change the water, and you can cut another 2 to 3 centimetres off the base of the stems, and that should free up those kind of tubes that the water gets pulled up into the top of the flower. I would advise, like I say, changing the water every 2 to 3 days. That will just keep it fresh. And you want to locate them somewhere that's not too hot, i.e. near a fire or radiator. They won't like drafts, so don't put them anywhere near a front door. The perfect place is out of direct sunlight, so maybe in the kitchen or in a hallway where it's bright but not too warm, drafty or sunny. But at this time of year, I don't think that's likely. Whatever you're doing this Valentine's Day, I hope you enjoy it. Bye bye.